Well, I just want to hear your story. So tell me how you guys have got to where you are today.
Aqueela, you want to start?
No, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay, so I started in Cincinnati, Ohio. That was like, I went to school, that's where I grew up. I played football in college, did all of that. And I never really tapped into my like full creative side until probably college and into my life got like kind of rudely interrupted, to be honest, by the Lord. I was like starting a business in Ohio as like this organic t-shirt company. We were like selling shirts at Whole Foods in the Midwest, stuff like that, while also working at a restaurant, doing that kind of thing. And it was a whole specific season of me learning excellence, even when I was like just working at a restaurant, college degree, all that fun frustration that you can feel of like, I want to be great, but here I am. But God kind of used that to teach me and lead me through a lot of character stuff and developing. And then I had a friend prophesy over me. He's like from Australia, and he ended up being like, yo, your life's going to change in no time. It's like almost like all of your lights are going to turn on, and it's going to make sense, and it's going to be beautiful. It's like, okay, that sounds fun. 5 months go by, nothing happens. I'm like, then I got that frustration of like, man, then I really got to the prayer of, okay, God, I surrender. Take me on an adventure. That was my actual prayer, literal prayer.
Wow.
On a day, and then Friday comes by. I'm saying the day specifically because they're actually very fun and specific. Friday comes by, a friend of mine is auditioning for a football movie. So he's like a football player trying to audition for a movie. I had no idea that was even a thing. Like I said, I played football in college since I was a kid. So I could do that in my sleep. And God used that to get me on a film in Ohio, of all places. And I did a football film. And 2 weeks later, so I started this film on Monday. So I literally pray on a Tuesday, and 6 days later, I'm on a movie set. 2 weeks later, I'm eligible for the union, which is a really big deal in entertainment, to be eligible for the SAG-AFTRA union, which is hard to do. It usually takes like 3 to 5 years, and for me, it happened in 2 weeks, which was nuts. And 3 months later, I'm moving to LA with what had become one of my best friends and brothers, Chris, and with no money, because I didn't plan to do this, and like everything that Australian man prophesied over my life came true on that set. It was pretty crazy. It was like bing, like it was just like literally the list all the way down. So I was like, okay, Lord, even though like I mentioned, I hadn't planned on becoming a movie person. I always loved movies. They always like took me away. I mean, you know, I feel like most people love movies just because it brings you into wonder. I always loved Hook, the film Hook, because it was like, you know, the Lost Boys, like always stay a kid, which is kind of what I'm trying to do, even though life's trying to make me grow up, but I'm trying to stay as long as I can. So I moved to LA, and then life got really fun and really crazy. From like within a month of moving there, I ended up booking 2 commercials, one for Gatorade, where I made over 30 grand like that. And I didn't have money, so God had to provide. Like it was a crazy story. And I had to, like, he had to show up. He didn't have to show up that big, but he did. And then I got another one, similar thing, all sports stuff, because God started using what I had, which is a huge part of anyone's story, I think, is like, use what is in front of you. I knew how to play football. So God used that to kind of like take me into my destiny, which was filmmaking. At least that's where I'm at right now. Who knows what will happen next? I could become a chef. I don't know. But now, what? Come on. Yeah. And so it was cool that God used football.
Yeah.
And I started doing football films and went to New Orleans for 3 months and shot a film with Jim Caviezel called When the Game Stands Tall. He was the one man who played Jesus in Passion of Christ.
Okay.
And so it wasn't that intense or bloody. It was a lot less intense, but fun film. So I just did all that kind of stuff and then started creating and producing and writing. And that's how I met Aqueela, was creating a film. We ended up casting her as our lead romantic female.
Yeah.
Well, and I wasn't even the lead. It was one of my friends, Jason. And the rest is history with that, which we could tell you more of that story in a bit. And then that's kind of, film is what happened because God like I mentioned, rudely interrupted my life that I had planned, and then it beautifully became
I feel
where
like
we are now.
maybe you said this already, but one of the things the first time I heard your story that really stuck out to me is that you had asked the Lord to like take you on. Didn't you have a moment you were waiting tables and you were doing other things that were going great and had promised, but you're like, Lord, take me on an adventure. Like take me, and that in a very nutshell way, that's what it became.
It became like a joyful adventure instead of like slugging along.
But again, it was an adventure that was, again, like God had equipped you with what you needed to have to be able to enter something you would otherwise never have entered into.
Yeah, I would have been terrified. But if I didn't have something I could do in my sleep like football, I would have never made that leap to do film.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of just became from stuntman, like being like only in front of the camera when they cut quickly because they didn't want to see my face because I'm doubling an actor, all the way to being the actor who was doing the stuff and needing that, all the way to flipping to the other side of the camera, which is what I'm doing mostly now, which is writing, creating, producing, and every once in a while I do athletic stuff, modeling and stuff like that, which is fun, meeting new people. So that's kind of what I do. And then, like I mean, Fawn, you saw the pictures. You might have seen too, Hannah. I don't know if she showed you, but from our film, I do photography. So, and that's become more and more of a passion of mine. And having a business to do because I just love. Oh, it's so fun to me. So that's my story.
Yeah.
That's the gist. Yeah. What's your story, Brita? Who are you?
Who are you? I just remembered something I forgot earlier, so I'm writing it down so I don't forget it again. My acting was never ever the plan, not even close. I moved down to LA. I moved to Long Beach to go through nursing school.
Yeah.
Because I had a wonderful, cool plan of becoming a nurse practitioner and owning my own wellness center and all of these things. And I was in nursing school in Long Beach, which was honestly an answer to prayer in itself, because at the time, on paper, just logically, I should have got into every college I applied to. And I remember that I knew that if I got into colleges close to home, I would choose to stay at home, but I didn't know how to trust if it was for the right reasons. And this prayer originally was like, God, will you please don't give me a choice. I don't know how to trust my discernment. Will you please just make it so clear where I need to go? And so the first 3, I only applied to 4 colleges, and again, on paper should have gone into all of them, but it was such a gift that I got rejected from 3 and only got into 1. Which was wonderful, and it spoiled me. I felt like that was like the beginning of me learning what it feels like to be like a spoiled daughter of God in a great way. He wants to answer those things, and it's not just because he doesn't want us to know how to do them, but in a time where we need help, like we can ask and it's good. And if we don't actually need help like we think, he'll teach us that too. And that it's all for like the extraordinary purpose of him teaching us who we are and who he is. So I landed in Long Beach in nursing school. Within like the first 2 months, realized it wasn't for me, which shocked me because I'd been volunteering in a hospital for years. I loved science. I was, humbly, I was like really, really good at all of the things. But I was like, it was the first time in my young adult life that I was like, there is something in me that should be in this, if this is what I devote my time and effort and skill to, and it's not here. And that completely baffled me, because to that point, I was 21 at the time. I had like never needed a plan B. I had never, like, if it was a plan that I had made, it worked, and then it would go. And so it was this very kind of confusing, humbling combination of, well, if this isn't the thing, then why am I here? Like, God, I asked you, and I only got into one. So I'm down all of the money that I saved. I invested, but now I can tell, like, 2 years, and I'd be so bitter. I just know this is not for me. But what do I do? And I had a phone call with my middle sister, Kamari, and we were kind of talking it out loud, and she's so wise beyond her years, and she had said, we had this long, it was like an hour-long conversation, and one of the last moments of it was she was like, Aqueela, wouldn't you rather be searching for something that you love than doing something that you know you don't? And it was like the most wonderful. I was still so emotional and like confused and perplexed for the whole situation, but immediately the only answer of my spirit was like, yes, I would. I'd rather be searching for something that I love than doing something I know I'm not called to, even if it doesn't make sense. So in response to that, the next like request was like, God, I wish there was a vocation that would require all of me. Because as I started to do a little like soul searching on how interesting, like while I was in the hospital, hands-on with patients going through nursing school, there were certain areas of me that I didn't even know about just from my story of life that weren't really needed, or it felt like they weren't needed. And I didn't even know what that means. It felt like God was planting seeds of desire that I had never really experienced before, for like wanting to experience Him bringing to purpose all different parts of my life in like what was the work I was applying myself to. So at the time, I was like, God, I wish there was a job that somehow I could get paid for that would want me to be all of these different things that I feel like I am because of the story of life that you've walked me through. The traumatic stuff, the beautiful things, the success, the failure. There's parts of me that are so intense, and then parts of me that are so silly and like childlike. Like it's like crazy variety of person in what. But Lord, where possibly could that all be wanted and useful? And within 6 months, I was acting, and I was like, oh my gosh, are you trying to, like, people want to pay me to like honor story and actually celebrate all of these different parts of who I am, to like bring stories to life. So that had been something I never, ever, ever, ever had imagined.
So how did you get into it?
I started, once I pulled myself out of nursing school at the end of that semester, and I had all this time now till I was like, okay, great, it's time to get another job to like help pay for college. And one of my cousins lives down in LA, and she had recommended, she's like, Aqueela, her mom had actually been a really big time model. And she was like, Aqueela, you live in LA, you should really see do you have a friend who takes photos? I could give you a safe site that's really known for like modeling stuff, and you could just see what happens. And my college roommate was a photographer by hobby. We did like a little photo shoot, and I put them up on the safe website that my cousin knew about and helped me figure out. And the first job that I booked ended up being like in Times Square. So it was just this like, God was giving me grace and favor before I even had any idea I was just so thankful that it was paying for all of my school books. So I was like, did not even think of it then as like it
was a business to you.
Yeah, I was so.
It wasn't like a fame, or it wasn't anything like that. It was like, you could pay my books for my books.
Yeah.
Modeling was a good job. Let's do that.
Yeah. So it was a very like, I don't think I would say I just fell into it, because there was definitely many series of choices where the Lord didn't tell me what to do. I felt like He allowed me to understand myself a little bit more and see if I was in an area that I actually truly either didn't want to be, or just He didn't need me to be in. Like I would say that I just wasn't called to. It just wasn't my place. And then started to grow me, starting way back then, of like what it means to like take a risk and make a choice, not just because it's crazy and exciting, but because it feels like there's something in this. So, and then through modeling jobs, I ended up getting, so in that first job, the one that landed in New York, I was like, got a manager and was going on humble modeling jobs that were awesome, and ended up going on one acting audition for like a background tall girl standing by the pool.
Yeah.
In that room, it was for like an indie film that maybe never got made, and I didn't book the job, but I ended up being in conversation with a young guy who was the writer and director of this movie, and he, through something, was like, hey, would you be interested in reading for one of these roles as like one of our sisters, one of the main. And I had no idea what I was doing. So he's like, yeah, of course, no problem, just fake it till you make it. I was like, yeah. And that, in essence, was kind of the beginning of me experiencing something else that I hadn't modeling is amazing, and I will always be thankful for it. It has paid my bills for many a years. But when I started, I ended up, after that audition and a process that kind of came from it, I decided to, I studied theater my senior year in college and started auditioning, and eventually LinkedIn, that manager who was repping me as a model then started repping me as an actor. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of me thinking of being like, oh wow, this is a business that I could actually make a livelihood out of and create something. And of course, like, full disclosure, I was like, well, Lord, I don't feel like you're calling me anywhere else, so this feels like the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you do a lot of acting like nowadays?
Yes, that's primarily, I mean, that's what I do all the time now. And I had a friend said this early on when I was first starting out. They had said, this business is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So, like, build up your endurance. And that was such good advice. And I think that even when I think about, like, where God's having us go, it's that. I was like, hey, this is a marathon. Sometimes it's a sprint, but it's a marathon. So, like, build up your endurance, build up your resilience. Because no matter where you're at, like, Graham Cook says this, I heard him say this the other day, he's like, when things are easy, it's part of God's will. Sometimes when things are tough, it's part of God's grace. Like, there's purpose in that. And there's all certain things that can come as a result of us recognizing who we are not and where there's room for us to become who God said we are. And I feel like, so it's been an exciting, fruitful 6 or 7 years, I think is how long I've been acting. And this year has been the first, or I should say, like, the next big milestones in what that looks like.
Yeah. So what does acting mean to you guys?
Ooh, good question. I have a very immediate answer.
Then you shall immediately answer.
This is like full on me just re-quoting something that Jesus said that I read in the Message Bible last night for the first time. One of the things I think I'd quickly say on a very, very, like, literal level is, like, I love acting because I love it for the sake of that there's always variety. I think even when I was young, like, I'd have so many jobs for like 6 or 7 months until I got to where I could go, and then I'd be like, okay, I feel like this is all I can grow here, so it's time to go somewhere else. So one of my favorite things literally about it is that it's constantly, like, new people, new areas, and always variety. So there's literally no here. Like, even as an A-list celebrity, there's constantly ways to rediscover more about who you are and how you craft what you do and the way you work with team, and I love that. When it comes to walking on sets and being with different people, it's like the perfect strategy to have a lot of time with a lot of different types of people who, like, inherently kind of want to engage with you. Because as one of the actors on a movie, especially if you're one of the leads as an actor in something like that, it kind of, like, there's an essence of, like, people, and again, this can be dangerous or also really powerful. Like, people want to listen to you.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And I think where the really, really good responsibility for me or for us, or Ryan as a producer and or actor, because he's so talented, was like, it's like the Spider-Man quote, like, there's a lot of privilege in that, because it's an immediate platform, but there's also a lot of responsibility that comes with that. Like, people will take to heart what I say when I'm on a movie set and have, like, kind of the prestige of one of those humbly stated, one of those names. But when it comes to, like, the umbrella, I was, like, reading this last night with a friend of mine who's a really successful actress and working on a movie right now, and we were both, like, jaw dropped, like, oh my gosh, this is the thing. And Jesus says it, so that's cool. So this is in the Message version of Matthew 13. The disciples came up and asked Jesus, why do you tell stories? And so Jesus is telling them, like, well, you have God's insight, but not everyone has that. Like, you have ears to hear, eyes to see and ears to hear, but not everyone has that. Whenever someone has a ready heart for this, the insight and understandings flow freely. But if there is no readiness, any trace of receptivity soon disappears. And then this is the sentence that hits home for me. That's why I tell stories, to create readiness, to nudge the people toward receptive insight. was like, so to me, it's not just about, I mean, it is about the stories, like movies-wise or show-wise, but at least in like Aqueela land of role, as I'm learning, as God's like teaching me as I walk it out, that's why I like acting. I like acting because it puts me in positions to like invite or nudge people into readiness to like start to realize who God truly is, not just to them, but for them, and then invite them. And then in step with that, partnered with the readiness for them to start to see and receive like who they really are and actually are.
So what acting roles are you involved with now?
So this was the first year that I was in a movie that was in theaters nationwide, worldwide. So that was really fun and a really big deal. And I booked a pilot this year. Are you guys familiar with what pilots are?
No.
So any TV show that you've seen, either on Netflix or Amazon or network TV, the pilot is the very first episode of each show. And in the entertainment industry, we have something called pilot season, which is where Fox and ABC and NBC and CBS and Amazon and Hulu, like any streaming platform or network platform, shoots multiple pilots that are potentially going to get turned into TV shows for like seasons and seasons, like New Girl or Empire or Game of Thrones or any of those. They all started with a pilot. So as an actor, booking a pilot is really exciting because there's potential that it could be like the next Breaking Bad. And so I booked a Fox pilot this year that I shot like a month ago. And we will find out if, I keep saying I know that it's going to get picked up, so I'm just waiting for everyone else to know that it gets picked up. That word. But we'll have the official word probably by next week or the week after, if it's going to get turned into a first series show.
Because I'm sure you guys can imagine being like spirit-filled believers in Los Angeles, but because it was fun, we prayed about this role, but by your eye, when you see it, you're like, oh, that might not be the thing, and we prayed about it, and God was like very specific, and he's like, hey, these are the people that you need to minister to. These women,
ultimately,
all these kind of stuff.
I feel like it was kind of just, without even over-spiritualizing it, it was just like, hey, I don't give less than gifts. And like, if I'm going to open a door for you, you can choose, you walk through it or you don't. Like, that's the nuts and bolts, that's all it is. You can think it to death or overthink it or over whatever. But like, I don't give less than gifts. Attend to it in ways you can, and then trust me to like have your back. And that was a really cool growing experience, because I think, yeah. So, there was nothing but goodness all over it. Like literally nothing but, and yeah. So.
Yeah, God really blessed it when she went to the production, like went on the set and stuff. Because there were like 3 or 4 different scenarios where he just kept upgrading her. It was amazing. Just the direct, like people had like saw her and was like, I like you. I want to make you like a bigger prominent part of the show. Like it was amazing to see God bless as we just kind of stepped into it. So it'll be fun to see what happens next.
Yeah.
What about you, Ryan? What does acting mean to you?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I stopped acting a year ago, so I stopped because I felt like it wasn't as, I kind of was going after an idea. It was very idealistic for me. Like I was like, okay, the idea, I have a gift. Like I know God gave me a gift to be an actor, but I was like, I have no passion in this, and I'm just kind of following this carrot stick, and I don't actually see myself doing it. It wasn't in my vision, and I totally feel available for God to bring that back up. But I kind of released it to Him about a year ago, and fully just stepped into being a filmmaker. That's a little.
Yeah, what does filmmaking mean to you?
That's a great question. Let me see. I always loved, like, I think Aqueela mentioned this earlier. She's like, I want to have a job that uses all of me. And for me, I've always been a creative, but I've also always been a business mind. And I couldn't fully figure out how to do that as an actor, but as a filmmaker, I can do both, be creative and produce, because producer in Hollywood means 100 different things. It could be the executive producer, which is known as the EP, which is like somebody who like gives the money or comes up with the idea and then lets other people make the whole thing. And then you have like line producers who actually like are boots on the ground. They're making the show happen. And then there's like a gazillion. So you use a lot of different parts of you as a producer, which I'm learning is really cool. But filmmaking itself, like I've always been attracted to story. Like story moves me. Like that's why, man. Like when we can watch, like we love this new show. It's not new, but for us, we love it. It's called Bosch, and it's a Amazon Prime show, and it's a detective show. So he's like a Los Angeles detective. It's all fiction. It's just based off of real events. But like, we both are like watching it because we're like, what's gonna happen? Is he gonna get the serial killer or not? And it becomes this thing where it kind of takes you, and then I've received so much about identity. Like even like Sandlot was one of my favorite movies growing up, and I don't know if you guys seen that film.
No.
Okay, no worries. It's about these like 10 kids in Northern California in the Valley that is like a baseball kind of kid. So they just have this team, and this new kid comes into town, and he's like kind of a shrimp, and he's not that great, and so it becomes this like brotherhood, and it's just one of those classic 90s films that was just one of my favorites. But the guy in the lead of one of the leads of the film, he kind of calls this kid who's a shrimp up to his identity, and he kind of like makes them part of his family. And that always spoke to me, but I never knew why until I realized that's what I do in my actual life, is do exactly what this guy did. And I never knew. And then it was funny, Aqueela and I, when we were, I think, engaged, we watched The Sandlot for the first time in like 8 years, and I was weeping.
Yeah.
It's like a kid's movie, and I am bawling because I never realized why it spoke to me until that moment. And the same thing with Hook that I mentioned earlier, which is a movie that maybe you haven't seen either, but it's an amazing film. Please watch it, starring Robin Williams. Mm-hmm. And it's like Peter Pan, that whole story.
Okay.
And it's about him being a kid, and like he lost his innocence, and he goes back to Neverland to find that. And it's a beautiful, fun story. But I never knew why these movies spoke to me until I started getting into understanding what identity meant. I really just understanding myself. I was like one of those like stereotypical guys who just didn't know what they felt.
Yeah.
Until I started to really learn about myself and doing like the self work that it took, getting married, doing work with Jamie and Donna, like really doing that work. And so filmmaking to me gets past your like cerebral mind all the way into your gut. And it speaks to you in that way. And it just took me 20 years to figure out that my gut was spoken to that long, my heart was spoken to that long ago. It was kind of called to my destiny. Wow, this is good stuff. And so I think it's a way to really penetrate. And I one of the things I'm most passionate about as a filmmaker, I don't have anything against Christian film. I think it's amazing, and I think it has a place. But for me, I want to make kingdom movies that has nothing to do with like saying the name of Jesus, nothing to do with like kind of spoon feeding people the gospel, where it's actually more kingdom-minded, kingdom strategy, identity stuff that's all through a story of like the film where we are making right now. We just shot last weekend called Bonnie. Aqueela is a female assassin. And literally it's the story of sacrifice, where she ends up sacrificing herself for the next generation. It's like this beautiful kingdom story, all masked with the idea, like with the story of an female like assassin action film. And so, because that's what non-Christians, that's what everyone, like those are what movies that people are going to watch. And I think a lot of people can come across Christian film. But God, that's my lane. I know that. I know God's spoken that to me about films that are a little bit darker or a little bit whatever, but it speaks directly to the heart of anyone, whether you're a Christian or they can get it. And I know that's my lane. That's like something I want to do, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
how have you guys discovered more about your true identities in the creative world?
The question. Man, I'm definitely in a season. I'm turning 30 in June. I can feel I can feel for like probably 6 months there's been a transition of like really stepping into my purpose, like full-fledged cannonball type thing. I can feel it, and I've done that. I know that I've been operating in where God has me, but I can tell that I'm moving to a whole nother level. And so even today, like I was like, to be honest, I went to our local park. It's like 5 minutes away, and was just like put my sunglasses on, and it was just like being really honest with God that I'm like really frustrated and sad with where I'm at right now. Like was very like just crying, and I was like, man, why can't I like get there? Like that's like the feeling, and I had to just be honest because I was like, okay, this is where I'm at. And even if like I'm literally doing the thing that I wanted to do for 6 years. Like I made this film, we did like part of it in Ojai, and we literally finished like a feature film, which is a big deal. And then we went the next weekend right into this next film with Aqueela as our lead. Like we're actually like, if people ask me about what I've been doing, they'd be like, holy crap, this is the thing that everyone wants to do. They're just too scared to do it. I mean, not everyone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm doing the thing, but I can feel at my heart and my, like, there's some part of me that is trying to catch up to, like, being satisfied without any of those things. And so I'd say, like, my identity is a passionate warrior. It's like that's like my thing. And so I know that as I step,
Or is it a passionate warrior?
Passionate warrior.
Okay.
And that was one that God gave me when I was 16. And then that was kind of reignited when I met Jamie 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And then God recently has been speaking to me about my newest identity, which I feel like there's identities and seasons, and I don't think it like.
Yeah.
I think it flows, and it's just a relationship. It's like constant up and down, like figuring out where God has you in this season. And He's called me a rainmaker in this season, which has meant so much because it's actually spoken to a lot of confidence in me. Because God sees me as a rainmaker, which is somebody who kind of goes into a situation and like always brings, like, puts you in the positive, and always will like you want a rainmaker on every team that you have, because that's the person that gets it done and really brings like the next level. So I feel like God's been speaking that to me, and He's like, hey, as a producer, you're a rainmaker.
Yeah.
As a husband, you're a rainmaker. You're going to make your wife's career or her new salon and all this stuff like flourish. Like that's what I feel like God's spoken to me about what a rainmaker actually does. And so I would love to be one of the men in LA, or one of the creators in LA that people see as a rainmaker. And I literally like feel like God's gifted me to be one of the forerunners in LA as a, undercover evangelical who loves God.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning what it looks like to do that. I still don't fully know, but I know like Igniter is another thing God's called me, and I love igniting people and serving people. And one of my biggest like phrases over my life has been serve people's dreams and watch me hand you yours. That's what God spoke to me about 1.5 years ago, and that focus has helped me a lot, because it's really helped me be like, okay, I'm going to serve you. I'm going to be a rainmaker in your life, and then God's just going to like hand me my dreams when it's time, which has kind of helped me like get away from my head, because I can get into the why am I not there yet feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so that helps me kind of focus on the person in front of me. So that's the gist. There's a lot. That's a very loaded question.
Yeah, absolutely.
We could talk for an hour on that specifically, but yeah, I think that's good enough for now. But Aqueela, what about you?
Most recently, I think I'm learning about my identity through my work by first realizing what I'm not, and then where there's space to become who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, I'm realizing that, or I'm growing to learn and realize that when I find myself in moments like on set or during the audition process where I'm ultimately just scared, worried, or completely unaware of how to be, those end up being things that infuse me with identity when I know where to take them. Like God gave me this picture of, I was out of town filming for the pilot, and I was like, the pictures help me so much because I feel like they simplify and like take it out of the unknown and the mysterious and into like something very, visually engaging and easy to kind of follow, at least for me. And I saw this picture of how I was feeling. I was like, God, I feel like there's like shadows coming all around me and they're like overtaking me. And I feel like it's overwhelming and I'm scared. I don't know what to do when that happens. And through the process of doing what Jamie and Donna would talk about is like, what is the divine exchange of like, Lord, this is where I'm at. Like, what is this? And what am I believing or what am I afraid of? And then identity ends up being it's identity of who God is or identity of who I am that always ends up replacing that. So it doesn't sound overtly fun, but that's more than anything. I think I experienced the freedom and the growth in like, I know, I will always be learning who I am, but I know who I am. Like, God calls me a compass of truth. Like, I will see the truth sometimes, even before it's needed to talk about. That's just because that's who God's made me. I am a prism. Like, things will shine through me and reflect to so many different people in different ways that they'll be able to receive because that's just who I am. That's who God's made me. But in the areas of how to apply those things, it's interesting how being realistic about in this moment, I have no idea how to be, and me telling myself I'm a compass of truth and prism is just not cutting it. So God, how can I engage with being realistic and honest with myself and with you so that you can empower me with actually who I am becoming through this? So it's like a tear down and build up process, which to me is so valuable.
Yeah.
And I think been the most like genuinely like, oh no, this is just how we do it. I was listening to something yesterday. It was just like perfect timing, I think, where Graham Cook had this quick little 16-minute thing on a podcast that I listened to yesterday about focus. And something he said in it was, there's a difference between gaining freedom and maintaining freedom. And I think that's ultimately what it is in identity. Of like receiving our identity is one thing, holding the ground of our identity is something very different.
Yeah.
A lot of friends and myself and both of us who have found ourselves in places where like, I should know what to do because God's told me who I am. So I should know, like, who said that? Did God actually say to you, like, David, you should know how to beat Goliath immediately because I've told you that you will be, it's like we forget sometimes, I think just in our humanness, how necessary and needed the process is that when we receive who we are, it's very, very likely, and at least in my experience, it's very real, that God will then equip us and build us into becoming who he already knows that we are. But that there's going to be, like David with the like bear and the lion potentially, and then Goliath, of like there's things leading up to that, where I think in the past, Ryan and I both kind of mistook that, if God's called me that, that's who I have to be now because that's who I am. And there's that, in the place I'm at right now, that feels like sweetly naive, I think, to be like, well, yes, expect that God will now give you the opportunities to realize in areas you don't believe that, and maybe you're not that yet, but that you already have all of what is needed inside of you, because truly that's who you are, but we just have to clean house a little bit.
Yeah.
So rather than those things and situations becoming discouraging, they're starting to hit me as like very, very opportunistic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.